Hello, everyone. I hope everybody's having a wonderful Sunday, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening. Um, my name is Brad, and I'm a life coach. I help people that are deconstructing from a religion, whether that's debating about it, the beginning parts, the middle, the end, whatever it may be. I also help people that are dealing with anxiety or anything else that they're struggling with. I'm there to help them reach their goals. Today, I have a very special guest. Thank you guys for logging on already. I see some familiar faces I love and adore. And special guest, her name is Talk Purity to me. At least that's her handle. Hey, Blair. I can't say anything cool like you said to Hey, be rad. So, Blair will be not the Blair I just talked to in Formalistic. I'm talking about Blair, Talk Purity to me, will be my guest today. I'm really excited about this because she is a wealth of information and knowledge, and we won't be just discussing purity culture. We are going to dive into mental health, and we're going to kind of explore that a little bit. So I'm excited to get to interview her because yes, she does have your same name, Blair. Did she steal it from you or did you steal it from her? That's the question. I would like to know the answer to. So that being the case, I'm excited. She will be logging on here shortly. We have some topics or some thoughts that we're going to be going through and exploring. And so I have been longing for the opportunity to do an IG Live with her and cannot wait for that. Hope everybody's having a good Sunday. My weekend has been very interesting. I feel like it's been already too brief of a weekend. Like I haven't got a lot of rest. I blame that largely upon my dogs who have some sort of stomach bug that has been going on for a little while now. And needless to say, I've been cleaning up certain messes in the middle of the night, which is always wonderful. All right, I see Blair has just popped on, so we're going to get connected here soon, so you don't have to listen to me ramble about my dog as well. And so we're going to get jumping on that as soon as she sends an invitation or says she wants to join in. Maybe she doesn't want to join in. What would that be like, where you're sitting there talking to yourself and boom, your guest shows up but doesn't want to join in? That would be kind of awkward and weird. So let's hope that she does want to join in. I'm going to try to, yes, there we go. Yes. Say hi to Blair as she comes on. Hi, Rebecca. Good to see you. Today's Rebecca's birthday. Okay, and hello, Blair. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I am good. I have just been totally rambling. Doing that. That's always awkward for me to do the introductory part.
I totally get that.
Yes, but I'm so glad that you're here. I've been looking forward to catching up with you on an IG Live for a long time, as you know. And life has taken us different turns at different times, so we've just kind of had to roll with it. So, that being
Yes.
for all those that for some strange reason wouldn't know who you are, would you mind taking a moment and just kind of introducing yourself? Oh, I think we got the spinning wheel. Can everybody hear us okay? Okay. All right. Would you mind taking a moment introducing yourself?
Yeah, my name is Blair. As you can see here, I do have this Instagram platform, Talk Purity to me. And yeah, I just enjoy making different content. It's really mostly about what I've experienced and kind of condensing that and just sharing like part of what I went through in the church, leaving the church, and life
Yeah.
beyond all of that. So,
Well, it is exciting to have you here. I was telling them that ironically, I'm not having you on here to talk about purity culture, which is a change. So
mm-hmm.
um, I know that you and I had talked, and we were excited to discuss mental health and the importance of being aware of that and everything that entails. So, for all those listening, we are going to cover that topic today the best we can in a short amount of time we can. Obviously, it will not be all encompassing. Um,
Yep.
that being said, just to know you even a little bit more, would you mind giving us a little bit about your religious background?
Yeah, I grew up Southern Baptist. I do live in the Southern United States, and did the whole, I was homeschooled in elementary school, a very like kind of sheltered background for like that period of time, and still even throughout like middle school and high school I was still pretty much in that sort of like Christian bubble for a lot of it, and eventually started asking the questions like a lot of us did, and then realized it wasn't for me, and the long process of leaving all of that. I know a lot of people have like these whole like light bulb epiphany type moments that they just like left the church, and it was not that way for me at all. I don't relate to those people's stories. I'm happy for them, and whatever they chose, but I that was not the case for me. So, but I did eventually, realize that I didn't want to be in those spaces anymore. They're actually really harmful for me and a lot of other people. And so I just, started very slowly, cutting all of that out of my life.
Mm. All right. And anybody that follows your page has a greater understanding of that and how you've cut that out of your life. And so we're going to talk obviously about mental health and suicide a little bit tonight or today, wherever everybody else may be. Would you mind kind of breaking down the term mental health and what that means?
Well, for me, and of course, I'm speaking as like a not a mental health professional, but just I think there's just basically sorry, I'm like having trouble thinking of like a good definition, but just understand like an understanding of um our own personalities and like the things that cause us anxiety or depression or things like that, and how we can take care of ourselves in that way, and not stigmatize our own mental health issues and the issues that others may be facing. I think like it's hard for me to talk about sometimes simply because I wasn't given a lot of like education at a younger age, which is part of like the issues that I faced. But mental health, I don't think it means that you never have anxiety or you never feel depressed or you never have any of these other mental health problems, because like most people have their different struggles, but it's about understanding that and like seeking the help and like the support that you need.
Which I think both you and I would agree that you said something like the education process, the awareness process, um, up until especially recently, I feel like it's been silent. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I think you have some other big celebrities that have chimed in and said this or that, and we're happy trying to bring awareness to it, and other people as well. But I think largely before, and this is just my opinion, I could be completely wrong. I've been wrong many times before, but I think one of the best things to happen to the awareness of it is the internet. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
when the internet came along, then the resources were more available with that. So you have a passion to speak out and educate people about mental health. How has mental health impacted your life personally?
Yeah, I think just from growing up in the church, and of course I think about my upbringing, obviously looking backwards at it, and seeing the things that I was struggling with, not having those resources, not having the support um to like identify those or get help or anything like that. I think it really did take a toll. I really struggled a lot with anxiety, and um, I know you mentioned, but if you're new in this live, we are going to be talking about like suicidal ideation. If that's a conversation you're not comfortable with, this is not the live for you. But yeah, I mean, I really did struggle with depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, especially like in my teens. And more early 20s, and for various reasons, like cultural reasons, I feel like mental health is a difficult conversation, at least in the United States. I can only speak to my own experience, so I'm talking about, in the US, it's a difficult conversation anyway, and then you add in the religious element of it. If you grew up especially in like more religious or more devoutly religious spaces, there's, a lot of pressure to just trust God and not seek outside sources for any kind of mental health help, which I really, it's hard because I know that the adults in my life probably never got that same help either, but they did fail me. Like the adults in my life did fail me, and I feel like we all can like recognize that. Also recognize that they probably didn't know either, but it's like, at a certain level, they the adults in my life should have like stepped in and given me the support I needed. And that's it is difficult to kind of contend with as an adult, but the only thing we can do now is try to get that support for ourselves as adults.
Now, I think you're incredibly right about that. I mean, my anxiety started when I was very young, but no one really knew what it was. So, you pull your bootstraps up and you chip plow on the best you can, and you don't let that weakness take you down. That's kind of how I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first had my panic attack in college, um, it was like no one understood what it was. I didn't understand what it was. I went to
Yep.
medical field. They all thought, hey, you have hypoglycemia, you have this, you have that, your blood sugar's low. No one had any idea. And I struggled with that anxiety for 15 years before I self-diagnosed it because I went on the internet. And I said, this sounds a lot like me. And I walked into a new doctor. I said, this is what's going on, I think. And they looked at my previous record and go, yeah, that makes sense. You know, oh,
Right.
okay, that's great to know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's whether I self-diagnosed myself, but the doctors didn't have a clue what was going on, right? They thought I had seizures or something like that. And so, and then growing up in a very conservative Christian, I was Southern Baptist as well. Pray it away, need more faith. God will heal you, so forth and so on, to go with that. And so, not until I really found out that I had anxiety issues or struggles or whatever you want to call it, did I start to feel more comfortable and say, okay, this isn't going to kill me, right? Because
Right.
what it was. And
Mm-hmm.
there are steps that I can take to hopefully not necessarily get rid of it, but to begin healing from some of the worst things, the triggers and stuff like that. And so, um, yeah, I just speaking on your front, I went to multiple doctors and no one figured it out. No one had a clue. And so it was not very well known, nor were the doctors even educated on it. And
Right.
so, what experiences have you had with others struggling with taking their own life, like suicide? Has that been a personal event that's taken place in your life, someone you've known, or what's happened on that front for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've known like many people in my freshman year of high school. um, a classmate of mine, a freshman, um, committed suicide, and then that same week a senior in our high school also committed suicide. So it was just like a very intense thing to experience. I was 14 or something, so, but it was someone I'd gone to school with since like fifth grade, so I definitely, it was very weird. I didn't really like know how to talk about it. And I have a twin brother, so we were both in the same school, obviously, and we just had such different reactions to it. And my mom, I feel like, didn't really know how to, contend with
Yeah.
the fact that like I was feeling a very different way than he was feeling, and I think just wanted the conversation to just stop. Which, I mean, again, it's like everyone has their own level of comfort with talking about mental health, and I can't like fault her for that. Um, but that was a really, intense experience to have so young. And actually, in 2020, I had a friend who actually he took the photo that you used for the live. Um, he was a good friend of mine, and he did commit suicide. And it was like he was like just an amazing person, and it was just a really difficult thing. And, I think there's been a lot of maybe more conversations than normal about mental health with the pandemic, which I think is good, but it's also unfortunate that it took something like this to get people really talking more about it, and realizing that our own mental health should be a priority always, regardless of what's going on out in the world and everything. So yeah, I've definitely like had to sort of figure that out on my own, not having a lot of support, but but knowing people and having to like work through those things on my own.
So, just for those that have just recently joined us, we're talking about mental health and suicide. Just want to let you know in case there's any triggering conversations that may affect you. So, just making sure you're aware of that. Um, uh, Now, seeing that at such a young age, um, how did you mentally walk through that? I mean, it's so much different when you hear it on TV. It says so and so committed suicide, and the prevailing thought, no matter how wrong it is, was that's just the easy way out. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
you've heard that before, but that's
Oh,
what,
for sure.
yeah, which was ingrained into me since I was a kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but walking through that and knowing the actual person or making eye contact with the actual person raises it to get a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Uh, so how you at 14 did you end up processing that? I mean, what did you do?
I just, it was really difficult to, I think it was more difficult to process it because a lot of the adults, like teachers and things like that, um, they were more so just focused on like getting us over it instead of like letting us process like the trauma it is for a classmate to, be there one day and not be there the next. Like it was very traumatic for a lot of people, but it was like the whole conversation almost immediately was just like, well, like in their perspective, like if you're a Christian, he's in a better place, or like maybe you believe people who commit suicide can't go to heaven, and then that's a whole other conversation. Maybe you have the stress of that. Like there's different perspectives, I guess, but it was never really like actually processing it. It was more so just like get over it. Like, you know, he just it was not really focused on like any kind of healing from it. It was just like glossing over it, which was really weird. But I do think that um, that's kind of what I did. I didn't really like process it a lot initially because there was not really that space to do that. Like our teachers weren't encouraging us to do that. So I didn't really feel like I knew how even.
Yeah, yeah, and that's I is it a disservice? I think it is. Is it a disservice for people that have passed away to immediately go the route they're in a better place? Um, that say that little phrases to try to bring us comfort instead of just dealing with the loss process. I
Yeah.
I mean, would you agree with that or disagree with that or?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the that's kind of a common thing among Christians and religious people, that I have come in contact with. There is a real resistance to feel or process or acknowledge emotions that are uncomfortable. Um, unless it's happiness and joy and peace, then people really don't want to talk
Hmm.
about it or feel it or anything like that. Someone I think suggested, I don't think I can do this, but someone suggested that we pin a comment
Okay.
about the topic, which is probably a good idea, but I think you have to do that on your end.
All right.
Um, but but yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the root of a lot of issues, not just for Christians, but I think there's an added layer of like this commitment that we feel that we need to always appear happy and joyful, which does leave a huge hole when it comes to acknowledging and processing difficult emotions. And I think that when, people pass away, whether it's, just your grandmother who passed away from old age or, something like this with someone taking their own life, um, that is like kind of an easy way to like mentally check out of the conversation um and yeah, I mean, I think it does a huge disservice, and you just end up having generations of, generation after generation of people who aren't equipped to talk about things
Yeah.
that are serious, like mental health and suicidal ideation.
Hmm. I think that runs through personally lots of different topics through the religious structures,
Yeah,
um,
same.
people as well. So let me ask you this question. Obviously, there's a great need for understanding and education of that, but how can we help people who struggle with mental health?
I think that, and it's different for, obviously, there's so many barriers to getting help with mental health. Some of them are financial, in different cultures, there's even like added layers of cultural stigma around seeking help for mental health. But I just know, like, for me, things that have helped me um, is, just seeing people who are being open about their own mental health struggles, no matter how together you think someone's life is. People, you never really know um
Right.
what someone's going through. And I think the internet, it does give us a lot of information and resources, but it also sometimes can make things look as if, if someone's life looks like shiny and great on the internet, then it kind of makes you feel like if you aren't that way, if your life doesn't reflect like what you see on the internet, then then that person must have all of their stuff together, and then it just kind of puts a bigger spotlight on what you feel like your own issues are. But a
Sure.
lot of people struggle with mental health, and it's kind of like just having one person, like seeing one person kind of go first and open up about what they deal with, can really help. So I'm not
Hmm.
saying everybody needs to put all of their issues out there, if you're not comfortable with that. I mean, that's definitely not what I'm saying at all. But even if it's just to a friend, if you just open up to a friend, you have no idea like if they're struggling or not. Because I think for most of the years that I was really struggling the most, I was an amazing student, and I was like doing all these things. I was super involved in school. I had friends. I like appeared really happy, and you know, I don't think anyone really would have considered that there was other things going on with me. Like, maybe the reason I'm so hyper focused on school, it's like I'm really struggling with anxiety about like my grades. Like,
Yeah.
people in a sense, kind of encouraged my mental health problems because they're like, oh, you're such a good student, you know? And I'm like, oh, well, I guess I just have to keep going because if I am not this exact, you know, if my grades start to slip at all, then people won't be happy with me and I'll like lose my shiny facade or whatever. So you never really know what people are going through, but you know,
Were you a people?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
For sure. And it's like, you know, there's other elements too, like everyone's family dynamics are different. Like if if you had siblings who took more attention, then maybe you didn't get that same attention or things like that. But I think just, you know, talking with people, if you want to help others, like maybe if you're comfortable to share, like that can be a really huge help for people. And, you know, posting resources, like if you want to, you know, encourage others to seek out help, you know, you can share different like free or low cost mental health resources. Like there's a lot out there now. And I think especially with COVID, you know, so much is online. So it can really be helpful for people to know that those resources are out there and are probably more accessible than they've ever been being, you know, on the internet. So
Yeah. Okay. So basically, what I'm hearing, and it is incredibly challenging to know when someone's struggling with mental health or even suicide, because those that are seriously considering suicide, and correct me if I'm wrong, don't throw out a lot of warning signs, potentially. As
yeah,
opposed to really are having doubts, we'll throw out some, potentially. Is that accurate to say that?
well, I feel it's so hard for me to say because I'm like I'm not being in the mental health profession. It's
Right.
hard, but I think yeah, I mean some of like everyone that I've known who has taken their life, I don't think any one of their friends really suspected it or like thought that there was anything to address or like had any concerns. Like
Mm.
that's just my own experience. And, you know, maybe obviously everyone's different. So
Yeah. Yes.
things manifest differently. But yeah, I mean, I think it can be hard even for people who are just having the thought. Like there is just so much stigma around even the thought of like wanting to take your own life that a lot of people never open up about it. Like I've been afraid before that like if I even say that I've thought about that, people will like call mental health services like and essentially like try to have me like involuntarily committed somewhere. I'm like,
Right.
that's a huge fear for people, at least for me. And you know, that's in the past has kept me from even talking about it. I'm like, I don't want that. Like that's not the kind of support that I really
Yeah.
would want. And I think just knowing that like knowing where those safe resources are, I mean that you don't feel like you're just gonna be um you know committed somewhere or something like that, you know. This country has such a terrible history of mental health, especially against minorities and against women, you know,
Yeah.
women or people in the LGBTQ community or other like racial minorities, black people, you know, just have had a lot of really traumatic things happen to them involuntarily, um, even as recent as like the 60s and 70s. Husbands could force their wives to have like electroshock or lobotomies, things like that, because they were depressed. And so I think you can't have that like be so recent and then not understand also why some people wouldn't feel comfortable coming forward with their mental health issues, because that is like in our very recent past in this country. Um, so yeah,
That's
it's
interesting. I never really thought of it that way. So that I see how valid that is, because I mean you're taught, or at least it's drilled into you today, that if someone has suicidal thoughts, you get them help right away, and that help usually entails something like the suicide hotline or counselor or whatever have you. Not saying they don't need that help, but
mhm,
that would be a fear in someone's person is like, okay, they're just going to pass me off onto somebody.
right. And like it will be, against my will, and I won't have any control over what happens to me.
Right.
It can be a really real fear for a lot of people.
And they're already struggling with what other fears could be or whatever have you. You're just throwing more on top of it. So that being the case, I wonder if is there a better way to go about getting someone help than our standard practice? I mean, I know you're not in the mental health. I'm just spitting
Right.
here because you raise a very valid point, right? I
Yeah,
mean
I
that.
mean, yeah, I think things do need to change, and I don't know like the answers really. I think we're still so fresh into a lot of these like conversations that um, at least in the mainstream, like I think things are better now, but I still do think like we have a long way to really what it means to support people who are struggling with their mental health. And like there it's just so multifaceted. I mean, there's so, like I said, it's such a nuanced thing. Like there's going to be no right way for everyone, but having different support that like meets the needs of people who are in different situations, like um and having those resources like widely known and removing that stigma. I hope that's where we're headed.
I like the comment that's just put in, and the shame if someone finds out, especially the family.
Yeah.
You know? And you can't even like, I mean, not saying they shouldn't do this because I'm not obviously in that field either, but I mean there are mandatory reporting laws based upon your profession as well.
Hmm.
So you could be sitting in a counselor's office having issues of thinking about, hey, I may want to think or commit suicide, and but if you utter those things, then it's going to automatically report it, and then you don't know what's going to happen, and so forth and so on. So, um, I think you're right. I think there's a maybe some nuances, some different ways to go about it. Um, uh, because a lot of times people that are at least from my experience, they just want to they want to be able to sit down and say what they need to say without feeling shame and knowing that they're going to be accepted and not just thrown off into some mental asylum is really what the mind goes to, right?
Hmm.
And it obviously looks different, and I don't think it's good enough for friends to say, yes, I reported it, now it's someone else's business, right? And that's difficult though, because when you're a teenager, I mean, the struggle of how to help or be there for somebody that's struggling with this, or have you. So I think there is a definite lack of education that goes along with this.
Yeah, I think, you know, mental health is health, but it's been moralized in such a way that, like, you know, talking about mental health, even with like doctors, things like that, it can be really difficult. It's like it's put on a level that's, if you have an infection and you need antibiotics, like, no one's ashamed of that. But we can't open up about something that is still a part of our own health, and something that we most of us probably didn't get any education on in school. I know I went to public school, and my health class never talked about mental health, not
My
even once.
Nope.
So I think there has to be just a recognition that our taking care of our brains and our mental health is just a part of taking care of us as like a whole person. And I don't think that has, it's been moralized, like I said, in such a way that most people don't think about it that way for themselves or for other people. And I don't know what, like, I'm hoping, like I said, that like we're headed in that direction. But um, I think if you are struggling, find, like, if you have someone, hopefully you have someone in your family or friends that, maybe they can help you find resources in your community, or those national hotlines, because it can be scary to like sort of approach it on your own, and maybe there's a friend who can support you, or um, help you kind of stay on track if you start having those like suicidal thoughts or things like that. And really, I know for me, even just like saying it, admitting it, does it took a lot of the stigma away from me that I felt for a long time. Just saying that, yeah, I have struggled with suicidal thoughts before, and that doesn't make me a bad person, or it doesn't, it's not something that I am ashamed of, because it's just been part of my experience. And um, it comes and goes. Like I've, like a lot of people who experience depression, sometimes you'll be good, and sometimes obviously things will feel more heightened, and it can feel really intense sometimes. But just being able to talk about it openly really, for me, has been helpful.
Yeah, and I think it's come and I know I say this, but I think it's come a long way, the mental health recognition, especially the last 10 years. I mean, because you consider World War II was not that long ago.
Mm.
And the idea that when those soldiers came home, the PTSD, the everything, I mean, no one knew how to deal with any of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it went for years without knowing, right? I mean, like, mental health was not a huge focus, if I can say that, at least from my experience. Like you said, nothing in schools, definitely nothing in the Christian community. It was more seen as a weakness, of faith or whatever have you, until recently when, more people are coming out saying, this is my experience, that we
Mm-hmm.
recognize it, right? So let me ask you this, because I'm really, I think that you um, are incredibly intelligent in the way in which you bring a message across. I just kind of want to ask this, but um, what are something you would say to our listeners who are struggling with mental health issues or suicidal thoughts? I mean, what would you tell them? What would you tell them to do or not do, or what encouragement would you give them?
I know for me, whenever I'm in that really dark place, I just try to remember that, um, it's okay to feel however you're feeling now, and also remember that you won't feel that way forever. This is just, what I tell
Sure.
myself. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
you won't feel that way forever. Um, and, you can stay in that place and, sort through your feelings. But even if it's just putting on, like, I'll just sometimes, like, I have like my comfort shows or my different things that I like to watch. Like, I never watch new television shows when I'm feeling like especially down, because I want to watch something that, like, I know how it ends, because new things like can trigger my anxiety.
Mhm.
And I just try to, if I need to cry, I'll cry. If I need to like go outside, that's fine. Just like, I think, like we were talking about earlier, there's that like, um, that outside pressure sometimes to just be really quick to move past those feelings.
Yeah.
For me, that's not really helpful, because typically they'll just manifest in other ways. Like I'll start lashing out at people in my life, like, um, people I care about, I'll sort of direct that towards them. And, that's, it happens, but I don't want that to be my go-to. I want to just like, um, be able to kind of look at those feelings and like feel them and just sit with whatever I need to. And, just try to remind myself that like, it is gonna pass, and like it's okay, but I will, get past this feeling.
No, I think that's great. Um, you have to find, for a lack of better word, or happy place or things that are going to bring some sort of solidity or solidify your footing at that time. Someone made the comment of Xanax um, up there as well, and or watching television shows. That's something we have not covered. Obviously, was the medication route, and that there is no shame behind having the medication. That is very much needed. Our brains are incredibly complicated,
Yeah,
um, totally, and so I'm on anxiety medicine. I mean, I'll just
yeah,
right up there. I mean, just to keep it steady so I can have some traction, or some footing during difficult times. And so I think that's another avenue, that there is no shame with taking medication. That is it's been very helpful in a lot of people's lives.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think um there's a really big push to, you know people say like, I don't know, there's a push to get away from medication in general, or you know just kind of handle it on your own, or take these essential oils. I mean, there's whatever works for you, but for some people medication is necessary. And people say, sometimes I hear people say like coping strategies or coping mechanisms, like it's a bad thing, like it's not a bad,
Right.
trying to cope is not, there's nothing to be ashamed of in that. And like
Yeah.
for some people it's medication that's, really necessary. Like I need glasses sometimes, and I don't think anyone would say, well, can't you just try to see harder? Like, can't you just try harder to see better, like on your own? Why do you need this extra thing? Like, I don't think anyone would do that.
Yeah.
Or like, if people, if I break my foot and I need crutches or something like that, I don't think anyone would look at me and say, can't you just try to walk better? Like, why do you need this extra thing? Like, I don't know why it's different. Like, I don't understand the stigma around that, versus like we all need things every single day. Like, I need glasses, my skin gets really dry without lotion. I don't think people would like just tell me to think like more moisturized skin thoughts and like just get over myself. Like that's not how it works.
All right. All right. Yeah, that's awesome. That's so very true. All right. So, any closing thoughts? Anything that you'd like to end on in the way of talking about mental health or suicide?
I would just say, like, if you are watching and you are struggling, um if you, hopefully you have someone you can trust with, whatever you're experiencing, whatever you're feeling. Like, reach out to that person, whether it's a text. I know texting is sometimes more comfortable, or like a call, or meet with them in person. And I mean, honestly, you'd probably be surprised. Like, I think a lot more people struggle with this than
Mm.
are willing to admit it. You may be surprised that like maybe that friend or that family member may have gone through something similar, or someone else in your family, or another friend or something. Like, um I didn't I actually, I've been looking at like genealogy things and talking with my mom, and like my I think it's like my third great grandfather or something back, like he he lost all his money and his wife passed away and he committed suicide. And it's, you know there's it's just, it's interesting. Like, I never heard that story. I'm,
Yeah.
30 years old, but like, there's we all have these struggles probably in our family history. And it's like, just understanding that there are people out there who care for you. And like, if you are struggling, try to reach out. And there are those national hotlines that I've heard recently are more staffed than ever, and they're trying to like help people, especially right now. Like if you are struggling right now during this pandemic, you are not alone. Like a lot of people have had extra stress and anxiety during this time. So please, don't be afraid to use resources, even if you've never like talked about it before, even if you've never reached out to someone before. Like people will be way more understanding and caring than you probably think. And just find those safe people that you can, count on.
That's great advice. And so I want to thank you for personally being here, Blair. I know that a lot of the questions we discussed, I mean, I know you're not a mental health expert, neither am I,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, but I love talking to people that have real life, you know, unfortunately, real life tragedies that have happened around them, that have seen it in action, right? And so I'm sorry that you've had to see that and go through that. I'd also like to point out, if there's anybody that's watching right now that doesn't follow Blair, um, she is worth a follow and more. That
Thank
I have
you.
been inspired. You have caused me to question things and my healing on your page. Talk purity to me. Um, you are excellent and intelligent at what you do, and
Thank you
so
so much.
very appreciative of your voice, and your voice needs to be heard. And so I'm thankful that you're using that platform. I also want to point out, I'm sure it goes for me, but I know it probably goes for Blair, that if you are struggling with any kind of mental health or having any kind of challenges or just need someone to talk to, I know that Blair would be more than happy to talk to you too. At least be able to help you find a safe space. I would love to do the same. You're not alone in going through this. Many of us have gone through this and face these kinds of challenges. So, Blair, thank you for joining me in IG Live. I really appreciate it. I think more of these conversations need to happen.
Yes.
Um, More education needs to be done. So, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for all of that. And yeah, if you are struggling, then yeah, reach out. And if I can't, offer the support myself, I'm happy to like point you in the direction of like different resources for certain.
Awesome, awesome. And obviously, you got a comment here in the end. I love how she deals with negative people that attack her.
Yeah, I try
Yeah,
to just, use humor and a lot of, when you gotta find the little like ways to make yourself laugh. At least that's for me. Like that's been a huge part of my healing, is just laughing, um, and just like seeing the like ridiculousness in certain things has been really, really helpful for me.
yeah, I love it too because it's funny when someone tries to take you on, and then I see the way you handle it, and like, man, I wish I was that creative.
Thank you so much.
It's great. With that, everybody that's joined us, thank you for being here with us through this, and those that are watching or have watched, appreciate you watching as well. So, look forward to talking to you more later, Blair, and wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.